Commander Park walked through the sterile corridors of Station Harmony 7 with the calm confidence of someone who had survived 15 years in the Terran Marines. The Defense Academy floated in orbit around a neutral world, housing the galaxy's first integrated training program. Here, humans trained alongside dozens of alien species, learning to fight together instead of against each other. At least, that was the idea. Had been teaching combat tactics for 3 months now, and she could feel the tension growing in her classes. Some of the alien cadets resented taking orders from a human. They saw her species as weak, soft, fragile compared to their own natural advantages. They had armored scales and massive strength. They possessed chitinous exoskeletons and lightning reflexes. They were beings of pure energy who could phase through solid matter. And humans. Humans were just flesh and bone, shorter and weaker than most species in the academy. Today was the monthly defense drill, a full-scale combat simulation designed to test both instructors and cadets under pressure. Checked her equipment one final time. Her uniform was standard issue, with light body armor that wouldn't stop a direct hit but might give her a few extra seconds. Her weapon was set to training mode, delivering painful but non-lethal shocks. The rules were clear. No permanent injuries, no deaths, but everything else was fair game. She entered the lower deck maintenance section, a maze of narrow corridors and tight spaces that mimicked the interior of a damaged warship. The simulation would scatter cadets throughout the area, and her job was to locate and neutralize threats while advancing toward an objective. Standard stuff. She had run this drill 100 times before. But something felt wrong. Instincts honed by years of real combat whispered warnings in the back of her mind. The corridor was too quiet. The usual background hum of the station's system seemed muted. She reached for her communicator to report the anomaly, but the device was dead. No signal. That shouldn't be possible inside the station. Then she saw them. 4 cadets emerged from side passages, blocking both ends of the corridor. She recognized each one immediately. Cadet, a massive whose scaled body barely fit through standard doorways. Cadet, whose features were set in what she had learned to recognize as anticipation. Cadet, whose energy form pulsed with aggressive intent. And surprisingly, Cadet Minu, a human from her own species. Minu's presence confused her for a split second. He was a good cadet, competitive and proud but never violent. His face showed conflict now, uncertainty warring with determination. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "Cadets," said calmly, her voice echoing in the enclosed space. "You're breaking formation. Return to your assigned positions." Nobody moved. Took a step forward, his clawed feet scraping against the metal floor. "We're tired of humans acting like they're superior," he growled in heavily accented standard. "You're weak, fragile. You don't deserve to command us." His mind raced. analyzing the situation with cold precision. This wasn't part of the drill. The weapons in their hands were held wrong, too tense, too aggressive. She glanced at the power indicators on their training weapons and felt her stomach drop. The settings were wrong, not lethal but close enough to cause serious damage. "You disabled the safety protocols," she observed, still maintaining her calm tone. "You planned this." This energy form flickered with something that might have been pride. "The monitoring systems, too," the said, her voice like wind chimes. "No one is watching. No one is coming to help you." Shifted her weight slightly, settling into a ready stance that probably looked casual to the cadets. They had made several mistakes already. First, they had warned her instead of striking immediately. Second, they had chosen a narrow corridor where their numbers mattered less. Third, and most importantly, they had underestimated what it meant to fight a human with actual combat experience. "Last chance," said quietly. "Stand down now, and we can resolve this through proper channels." His mandibles clicked in what she recognized as laughter. "4 against 1, Commander. The odds aren't in your favor." Allowed herself a small smile. "Cadets, you've studied human military history in my classes. Did you miss the part where we don't fight fair?" The tension broke. Fired first, an energy bolt that sizzled through the air where head had been a moment before. The commander was already moving, her body dropping into a crouch and rolling to the side. The corridor erupted into chaos. Charged from the left, using his massive bulk to try to pin her against the wall. Came from the right, his chitinous fists ready to strike. Minyu hesitated, his weapon raised but not firing. That hesitation told everything she needed to know about their plan's weak point. She didn't fight the charge. Instead, she used momentum against him, stepping aside at the last possible second and driving her elbow into the nerve cluster behind his knee joint. The stumbled, his massive weight carrying him forward into a support pillar with a resounding clang. Was on her immediately, faster than most species could track, but had fought before in the border conflicts of the outer colonies. She knew their pattern, their rhythm. She ducked under his first strike, blocked the second, and then did something the cadets didn't expect. She retreated directly toward Minyu. The young human cadet's eyes widened as his instructor backed toward him. He raised his weapon, but his hands were shaking. Could see the doubt on his face, the realization that this had gone too far, that someone might actually get hurt. "Minyu," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos, "you don't want to do this." For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The other cadets paused, watching to see what the human would do. Minyu's weapon wavered, dropping slightly. Then moved. She grabbed Minyu's weapon arm, not violently but firmly, and pulled him forward. His greater height and weight worked against him as she used a basic judo principle, turning his own momentum into a weapon. She spun, using his body as a shield between herself and the others. Fired again, but the energy bolt struck Minyu's armor instead of. The young man cried out in pain and surprise, felt a flash of regret but pushed it aside. This was survival now. New odds, said, breathing controlled despite the adrenaline flooding her system. 4 against 1 plus 1. Better, but still not good enough for you. She could see the calculation in the other cadets' eyes. They had expected an easy victory over a weak human. Instead, they faced someone who had turned their own teammate against them in seconds. The ambush was falling apart, and the real fight was just beginning. Minyu stumbled backward, smoke rising from where the energy bolt had scorched his chest armor. The impact had knocked the wind from his lungs, and his weapon clattered to the floor. Released him and kicked the weapon away in one smooth motion, sending it skittering down the corridor beyond reach. Shouted, his mandibles clicking in anger, "Watch your fire!" This energy form pulsed with irritation. He was in the way. The human is using him as a shield. "That's what I do," said simply, her eyes scanning all 4 cadets at once. "I use every advantage available." Had recovered from his collision with the pillar and now blocked the far exit, his massive frame filling the corridor completely. His reptilian eyes glowed with cold fury. He had expected this to be quick and brutal, a lesson taught to an arrogant human. Instead, he was bleeding from where his scales had cracked against the metal support. His breathing remained steady and controlled. She had been in worse situations. The Battle of Station had been worse. The retreat from had been worse. This was just 4 angry kids who thought they understood combat because they had natural advantages. Minyu was on his knees gasping for air, felt genuine sympathy for him. The boy had been manipulated by the others, his pride used against him. She could work with that. She could use that. "Minyu," she said quietly, keeping her peripheral vision on the others. "You need to make a choice right now. Are you with them, or are you smart enough to stop this before someone gets seriously hurt?" The young man looked up at her, confusion and pain written across his face. I didn't think." "No, you didn't," agreed. "But you can think now, last chance." Before Minyu could answer, rushed forward with the terrifying speed of his species. Covered the distance in a blur, his chitinous fists swinging in combinations that could shatter bone. Dropped low, feeling the air displaced by his strikes passing overhead. She swept her leg out, targeting his ankle joint where the exoskeleton segments connected. Crashed to the ground with a sound like breaking ceramics. He was up again in seconds, but those seconds mattered. Had already moved, circling to keep Minyu between herself and its line of fire. "Stop hiding behind him." His voice crackled with energy and frustration. "Fight like a warrior." Warriors fight smart, not fair, replied. She grabbed Minyu's collar and hauled him to his feet. The boy was heavier than her, but leverage and technique compensated for the difference. Minyu, I'm going to ask you something. Do you trust me? What? No, I mean. Minyu's eyes were wide with panic. Wrong answer, but it doesn't matter. Positioned herself behind him, using his body as mobile cover. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk toward nice and slow. She'll shoot me again. Probably, admitted. But your armor will take it. And while she's focused on you, I'll be doing something else. Charged from behind, his heavy footsteps announcing his approach. Had been counting on that. She shoved Minyu to the left and threw herself to the right, rolling under's grab and coming up beside one of the maintenance panels built into the corridor wall. Her fingers found the emergency release, and she yanked it hard. A cloud of fire suppression foam exploded into the corridor, filling the space with thick, vision-obscuring whiteness. The foam was designed to smother flames and cool overheated equipment, but it also made excellent concealment. She's in the foam's voice called out. Spread out, don't let her escape. That was exactly what wanted them to do. In the white haze, the cadet's superior senses meant nothing. Compound eyes were useless. Energy perception was scrambled by the foam's chemical composition. Heat vision detected foam at roughly body temperature in every direction. Only Minyu, with standard human senses, had any chance of tracking her. And Minyu was still trying to figure out which side he was on. Moved through the foam silently, her boots barely touching the floor. She had trained in zero-visibility combat for years. The Terran Marines didn't have compound eyes or energy perception or heat vision. They had to learn to fight blind, using sound, touch, and instinct. She heard moving to her left, his breathing heavy and frustrated. She heard chitinous legs scraping against the floor ahead. She heard energy form humming with gathering power. And she heard Minyu, breathing hard, still standing where she had left him. Decision time. Moved toward Minyu, approaching from behind. She touched his shoulder lightly and he jumped, spinning around with his fists raised. In the white fog they were face to face. Choose, whispered. Right now. Help me end this safely, or watch your friends get hurt when I stop holding back. Minyu stared at her through the foam. His jaw clenched. For a long moment thought he would shout for the others, give away her position. Then he nodded just once. What do you need? He whispered back. When I give the signal tackle, low at the legs, can you do that? Minyu swallowed hard but nodded again. Patted his shoulder once, then melted back into the fog. She circled around to where she estimated would be floating. The was dangerous at range but vulnerable up close. Energy beings had trouble maintaining cohesion under physical stress. she found by the light that couldn't help but emit a soft glow in the white haze, pulled a small device from her belt, a resonance disruptor that was standard equipment for dealing with energy-based life forms. She set it to the lowest setting, enough to disrupt but not to cause permanent harm. "There you are," his voice rang out triumphantly. The had spotted its thermal signature through a gap in the foam. An energy bolt lanced through the white haze. Was already moving. The bolt hit the wall behind where she had been standing, leaving a scorch mark in the metal. Closed the distance and pressed the disruptor against its core matrix. The scream was like shattering glass. Her energy form flickered and destabilized, unable to maintain coherence. She wouldn't be unconscious, but she would need several minutes to recover enough to be a threat. This voice called out in alarm. He rushed toward the sound, emerging from the foam like a nightmare made of chitin and rage. Whistled sharply the signal. Minu appeared from the fog and did exactly as instructed. He threw his full weight at its legs, wrapping his arms around the knees. Toppled forward, caught completely off guard by the betrayal from his own conspirator. Was there when hit the ground. She drove her knee into the soft joint between his head and thorax, right where the nerve cluster sat. The went limp, not unconscious but temporarily paralyzed. That left. The massive emerged from the dissipating foam, his eyes taking in the scene, flickering weakly against the wall, twitching on the ground. Minu standing beside the human instructor, shame and determination mixed on his face. "Just you and me now," said calmly. "You can walk away right now. Take your punishment like a soldier, learn from this mistake and move on with your life." As lips pulled back, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "I don't take orders from prey species." He charged and smiled. Because prey species, she had learned long ago, were often the most dangerous creatures in any ecosystem. This charge shook the corridor, weighed at least 3 times what did, his armored bulk moving with surprising speed for something so massive. His claws gouged furrows in the metal floor as he accelerated, fully committed to crushing the small human against the wall. Stood her ground, watching him come. Every muscle in her body was screaming at her to move, to run, to get out of the way. But running was what prey did and expected her to run. So she waited. At the last possible second, when she could smell the sulfur on his breath and see the individual scales on his face, dropped to the floor and rolled to the side. Couldn't stop his momentum. He hit the wall with the force of a small vehicle, and the metal actually dented inward from the impact. The staggered backward, dazed. A normal human would have tried to run at that point, to put distance between themselves and the recovering threat, but knew that distance favored the larger, stronger opponent. So instead, she moved closer. She grabbed one of the foam canisters that had fallen during the chaos and swung it hard into the back of knee joint. The leg buckled, and he dropped to one knee with a roar of pain and fury. Minyu called out, "Stun baton 2 meters to your left." The young human scrambled to grab the weapon she had spotted earlier. He tossed it to her and caught it one-handed without looking. The baton hummed to life, crackling with electrical energy. It was set for training mode, but even training mode would hurt a lot against nerve clusters. The swung his massive arm in a backhanded strike that would have broken every bone in his body if it connected. She ducked under it and jabbed the stun baton into the exposed nerve bundle under his arm. His entire right side went numb, his arm dropping uselessly to hang at his side. But he wasn't done. With his left arm still functioning, grabbed for her. His clawed hand closed around his leg and he yanked hard. The world spun as she was lifted into the air and slammed into the floor. Pain exploded through her back, and for a moment her vision went white. Training and instinct saved her. Even half-stunned, his hand still gripped the stun baton. She jammed it into his wrist, right where his scales were thinnest. The grip spasmed open and rolled away, gasping for breath. Her back screamed in protest as she forced herself to her feet. Nothing broken. She assessed quickly, but she would be covered in bruises tomorrow, if there was a tomorrow. Was rising too, his face twisted in rage. The temporary paralysis in his right arm was already fading as his species' robust nervous system compensated. In another 30 seconds, he would be back to full strength. Had maybe 20 seconds to end this. She looked at Minyu, who stood frozen, watching the fight with wide eyes. The boy had helped her once, but she could see the fear in his expression. He had never been in a real fight before, never felt the chaos and terror of genuine combat. "Minyu," said, her voice steady despite her ragged breathing. "I need you to trust me now, completely. Can you do that?" The young man nodded slowly. "When I say go, I need you to charge. Full speed like you're trying to tackle him. That's suicide. He'll tear me apart." "Only if you hesitate," replied. "But you won't hesitate because you trust me, right?" Minyu's throat bobbed as he swallowed. "Right." Had recovered enough to stand, both arms working again. He looked between the two humans and his lips curled in contempt. "You think another human will save you? Your whole species is weak." "My species survived ice ages and predators and diseases that would have killed most species before they ever reached the stars," said calmly. "You know why? Because we're pack hunters. We work together. We use tools. And we never, ever give up." As she raised her voice, "Go." Minyu charged, screaming to give himself courage. His attention snapped to the approaching cadet, and he braced himself to receive the impact. He was ready to swat Minyu aside like an insect, but had already moved. While focused on Minyu, she sprinted at an angle, using the wall to gain height. Her boots hit the wall 2 steps up, and she pushed off hard, launching herself from the side. The stun baton led the way, aimed at the neck where his spine met his skull. Minyu hit low at the same moment, his shoulder driving into his stomach. They had to choose which threat to address, and in that split second of hesitation, both humans struck. Baton connected with the nerve cluster. Minyu's tackle knocked center of gravity backward. The massive toppled like a falling tree and rode him down, keeping the baton pressed against his neck until his body went completely limp. Silence filled the corridor, broken only by heavy breathing. Stood slowly, wincing at the pain in her back. She looked down at his unconscious form, then at Minyu, who sat on the floor looking shocked at what he had just done. Across the corridor, had recovered enough to reform her energy matrix. She flickered weakly, clearly debating whether to continue fighting. Was still partially paralyzed, watching everything with his compound eyes. "It's over," announced, her voice carrying absolute authority. "All of you stay down. Security will be here soon." "You disabled communications," pointed out, her voice weak but defiant. "No one knows what happened here." Smiled tiredly. "You disabled the monitoring systems in this section. But did you really think the Academy wouldn't notice when an entire section went dark during a defense drill? They've probably been trying to reach us for the last 5 minutes." As if on cue, the corridor's emergency lighting flickered back on, and the distant sound of running boots echoed through the station. The security lockdown was being lifted from the outside. Minyu looked up with something like awe. "You knew they would come." "I counted on it," confirmed. "My job was just to survive until they did, and to make sure none of you got killed doing something stupid." She walked over to and helped the sit up, checking his paralyzed segments with professional efficiency. "Feeling will return in about 10 minutes. You'll be fine." His mandibles clicked weakly. "How? We had every advantage, strength, numbers, surprise." Met his compound eyes steadily. "You had advantages. I had experience. I've fought, and before, in real combat where the stakes were life and death. You've fought in simulations where safety protocols kept you alive. That's the difference." She moved to check on next, her movements calm and professional despite the adrenaline still flooding her system. This energy form pulsed with something that might have been respect. "You used him," said, gesturing toward Minyu. "Your own species, as a weapon." "I used a confused kid who made a bad decision as an opportunity to end this without anyone dying," corrected. "That's called tactics. And mercy." The security team burst into the corridor, weapons raised and ready. They took in the scene quickly. 4 cadets down or recovering, 1 human instructor standing calm and apparently in control. Commander Park, the security chief said, lowering his weapon. Are you all right? We need a full report. Straightened despite her aching back and nodded. I'm fine. These 4 cadets will need medical attention and disciplinary processing. Log this as attempted assault on an instructor with premeditation. As the security team moved in to secure the cadets and provide first aid, Minyu approached hesitantly. Thank you, he said quietly, for giving me a chance. Looked at the young man for a long moment. You made a mistake, a serious one, but you also made a choice when it mattered. Remember that feeling, Minyu. Remember what it costs to make the wrong choice and what it takes to make the right one. She turned to follow the security team out, then paused and looked back at all 4 cadets. And for what it's worth, you're all going to be excellent soldiers someday, once you learn that strength isn't everything. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of diagnostic equipment. Sat on an examination table while a medical drone scanned her back, its sensors mapping the extensive bruising that was already beginning to form. The doctor, a gentle with 6 delicate arms, worked efficiently while occasionally making sympathetic clicking sounds. You are fortunate, Commander, the doctor said in her melodic voice. No fractures, no internal bleeding, just significant soft tissue damage. You will be quite uncomfortable for several days. I've had worse, replied, which was true. They handed her a dermal patch that would reduce the swelling and pain, applied it to her lower back and felt immediate relief. Across the medical bay, separated by privacy screens, the 4 cadets were receiving their own treatment. Could hear grumbling complaints about his damaged scales, his mandibles clicking as feeling returned to his paralyzed segments, and his energy form flickering as she recovered her cohesion. Minyu sat alone on a bench, his chest armor removed to reveal the burn mark from his energy bolt. He wasn't seriously injured, but the shame on his face suggested his emotional wounds went deeper than the physical ones. The medical bay doors opened. An admiral entered with crisp, measured steps. The older woman's expression was unreadable as she surveyed the scene. Behind her walked 2 military police officers and the Academy's disciplinary officer, a stern whose species was known for their strict adherence to law. Commander Park, Admiral said formally, I need your statement regarding today's incident. Slid off the examination table, standing at attention despite her injuries. Yes, Admiral. At approximately 1400 hours, I entered the lower deck maintenance section for the scheduled defense drill. 4 cadets had disabled the safety protocols and monitoring systems. They ambushed me with intent to cause harm. The disciplinary officer's recording device captured every word. Admiral's face remained neutral, but her eyes showed concern. These are serious allegations. You're accusing 4 cadets of conspiracy and assault. Not allegations, Admiral, facts. The evidence will show disabled systems, weapons set above regulation power levels, and coordinated attack patterns. This wasn't an accident or a drill that went wrong. This was planned. From behind the privacy screen's voice called out angrily. She's lying. It was part of the drill. We were just following orders to test her. Admiral walked to screen and pulled it aside. The Massive sat on a reinforced medical bed, his scales cracked and bruised in several places. The Admiral's expression hardened. "Cadet, do you have documentation of these orders? Any official communication authorizing you to disable safety systems and attack an instructor?" His mouth opened, then closed. His eyes shifted to the other cadets, looking for support that didn't come. Spoke up from his bed, his voice quiet. "There were no orders, Admiral. We acted on our own initiative." The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Admiral's expression shifted from neutral to disappointed, which was somehow worse than anger. "I see," she said softly. "Then you will all be formally charged with assault, conspiracy, sabotage of safety equipment, and conduct unbecoming of military cadets. The tribunal will convene tomorrow morning." His energy form pulsed with distress. "Admiral, we didn't mean for it to go this far. We just wanted to prove that humans aren't superior to other species. By attacking an instructor during a drill," the Admiral's voice was sharp now, "by coordinating an ambush that could have resulted in serious injury or death. Tell me, Cadet, what exactly did you think would happen?" None of the cadets had an answer. Admiral turned back to, "Commander, given the severity of this incident, I'm prepared to recommend expulsion for all 4 cadets and possible criminal charges. What is your recommendation?" Had been expecting this question. She had spent the last hour thinking about it while the medical drone worked on her back. The easy answer would be to expel them, to make an example that would prevent future incidents. But the easy answer wasn't always the right one. "A permission to speak freely, Admiral." "Granted." Looked at each of the cadets in turn. They made a terrible decision. They let prejudice and pride override their judgment. But they're also young and inexperienced. They've never seen real combat, never understood the consequences of violence outside controlled simulations. She paused, choosing her words carefully. One of them, Cadet Minu, made a choice during the fight. He chose to help end the situation rather than continue it. That shows he can learn. That shows he has potential. Minu looked up at her, surprise evident on his face. "The others need to understand the gravity of what they did," continued. "But I believe they can become good soldiers if given the chance. I request leniency for all 4 with conditions." Admiral raised an eyebrow. What conditions? Suspension from regular classes for 1 semester. Mandatory ethics training and psychological evaluation. Community service within the station. And remedial combat training under my direct supervision, focusing on why we fight and how we fight, not just the techniques. The disciplinary officer made a strangled sound. Commander, you want to personally train the cadets who just attacked you? Yes, said firmly. Because I think I'm the only one who can teach them what they need to learn. They don't respect humans because they don't understand what makes us effective soldiers. Let me show them. His voice was bitter. We don't want your charity human. Turned to face him directly. This isn't charity, it's an opportunity. You can take it and learn, or you can refuse and face expulsion. Your choice. Admiral studied for a long moment. You realize this is highly irregular. The victim of an assault requesting to train her attackers. I do, Admiral, but I didn't join the military to punish mistakes. I joined to protect people and to help create better soldiers. These 4 can be better. They just need guidance. The Admiral nodded slowly. Very well. I'll take your recommendation to the tribunal. However, the final decision will be theirs. And Commander, if any of these cadets step out of line during their remedial training, they will be immediately expelled. Understood? Yes, Admiral. The disciplinary officer looked unhappy, but made notes in his recorder. The 2 military police officers took positions near the cadets, ready to escort them to temporary holding cells pending the tribunal. As the Admiral prepared to leave, Minyu stood up and walked toward. The military police tensed, but raised a hand to stop them. Commander, Minyu said, his voice thick with emotion. I don't understand. Why are you helping us? We tried to hurt you. Met his eyes steadily. Because someone once gave me a second chance when I made a mistake. Not as serious as this, but serious enough. That chance changed my life. Maybe this will change yours. She looked at all 4 cadets. You wanted to prove humans aren't superior. You're right, we're not. We're not stronger or faster or tougher, but we survive because we adapt, we cooperate, and we never stop learning. That's what I want to teach you. Not how to be human, but how to think like a survivor. His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Even looked less hostile, though his pride clearly still stung. His energy form stabilized, pulsing with what might have been gratitude. If the tribunal accepts this arrangement, I will attend your training, Commander. Me too, added quietly. Was silent for a long moment, his reptilian features unreadable. Finally, he nodded once. I will participate, but not because I accept that humans are worthy teachers, only because I wish to understand how you defeated us. That's a start, said with a slight smile. Mean you didn't say anything. He just stood at attention and saluted properly for the first time since she had known him, returned the salute. Admiral watched the exchange with interest. "Commander Park, you continue to surprise me. I'll inform you of the tribunal's decision tomorrow. For now, get some rest. That's an order." "Yes, Admiral." As everyone filed out of the medical bay, sat back down on the examination table. Her back ached, her muscles were stiff, and tomorrow she would probably feel even worse. But she also felt something unexpected: hope. 4 cadets had made a terrible mistake today. But if she could turn that mistake into a lesson, if she could help them become better soldiers and better people, then maybe something good could come from this incident. The doctor approached with another dermal patch. "You should rest now, Commander. Your body needs time to heal." Accepted the patch and smiled tiredly. Healing takes time, teaching takes longer, but both are worth the effort. She thought about tomorrow's tribunal, about the challenges ahead if her recommendation was accepted. Training the 4 cadets who had attacked her wouldn't be easy. There would be resentment, resistance, and probably more conflicts before real progress happened. But humans were good at difficult things. It was kind of their specialty. 6 months had passed since the incident in the lower maintenance deck. The tribunal had accepted Commander Park's recommendation after intense deliberation, and the 4 cadets had begun their remedial training under conditions that were strict and unforgiving. Now stood in the Academy's main assembly hall, facing over 300 cadets from dozens of species. The hall was designed to accommodate the galaxy's diversity, with varied seating configurations, atmospheric controls, and gravity zones. Every cadet in the Academy had been ordered to attend this mandatory session. Behind her, a large display screen showed frozen footage from the incident. The Academy had recovered the video from backup systems that the 4 conspirators hadn't known existed. The footage showed everything: the ambush, the fight, and how had used one cadet to systematically defeat the other 3. Admiral stood at the podium, her voice carrying through the hall's audio system. "What you're about to see has become known as the Defense Drill Incident. It serves as a case study in tactical thinking, species integration, and the consequences of allowing prejudice to override judgment." The Admiral gestured too. "Commander Park will walk you through the engagement. Pay attention. This material will be part of your tactical training curriculum going forward." Stepped to the podium, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes on her. Some looked curious, others skeptical, and a few showed open hostility. Good, she thought. Hostility meant engagement. "Before we begin," said, her voice calm and clear, "I want to introduce 4 individuals who have agreed to participate in this presentation." From the side entrance, Menu, and entered the hall. The assembly erupted in whispers. Everyone knew the story, but seeing the actual participants was different. The four former conspirators had changed in visible ways. Minyu stood, his bearing more confident but also more humble. His movements were more controlled, less aggressive. His energy form pulsed with steady calm rather than erratic pride. Even seemed different, his massive frame carrying itself with discipline rather than arrogance. They took positions beside, facing the assembly. "These four cadets attacked me 6 months ago," stated bluntly. "They planned an ambush, disabled safety systems, and intended to prove that humans are inferior through violence. They failed. Today, they're here to explain why." She nodded to Minyu, who stepped forward. The young man's voice was steady despite the attention of hundreds of cadets. "We failed because we confused physical advantages with tactical superiority," Minyu began. "I'm human, same species as Commander Park. I'm taller, younger, and I thought that gave me an edge. But she has 15 years of combat experience. She's fought in actual battles where losing meant dying. I'd only ever fought in simulations where safety protocols kept everyone alive." He paused, looking at the frozen image on the screen that showed using him as a shield. "She used me against the others because I was the weak link psychologically. I hesitated, I doubted, and she exploited that doubt in seconds. That's not superior strength, that's superior thinking." Stepped forward next, his mandibles clicking as he spoke. "My species, are faster and stronger than humans in most physical measures. I expected my speed to overwhelm her. But Commander Park had fought before. She knew our patterns, our weaknesses, our predictable attack combinations. She turned my own speed against me by forcing me to move in confined spaces where I couldn't use my full range of motion." The gestured to the screen where footage showed sweeping his legs. "She targeted my joint segments, the one weak point in our exoskeletons, not because she was lucky, because she studied, because she learned, because humans understand that every species has vulnerabilities, including their own." Floated forward, her energy form casting soft light across the front of the hall. "I underestimated human adaptability. My species can phase through solid matter and project energy at range. I thought distance and intangibility made me untouchable. But Commander Park carried a resonance disruptor specifically designed to counter physiology. She came prepared for threats she might face." This form pulsed with something that might have been embarrassment. More than that, she used the environment. The fire suppression foam disrupted my energy perception. She turned the station itself into a weapon against us. That's what humans do. They use everything. They waste nothing. They find advantages where others see only obstacles. Finally moved forward. The massive's voice rumbled through the hall. "I am 3 times Commander Park's weight, My scales can stop most small arms' fire. My strength can bend steel. I charged her with the full intent to crush her against a wall, and she defeated me using my own momentum, a stun baton and a human child who weighed half what I do. He looked at Minyu, and something like respect passed between them. She coordinated an attack using a cadet who had just helped me try to harm her. She forgave his mistake in the middle of combat and turned him into an ally in seconds. That level of tactical flexibility, that ability to see opportunities in chaos, that is why humans command respect in this academy. Let the words settle over the assembly before she continued. Let me be clear about something. Humans are not superior to any species here. We're not the strongest, fastest, toughest, or most naturally gifted. What we are is adaptable. We're creative. We're endurance hunters who learn to outlast prey that could outrun us. We are social creatures who learn to cooperate in groups to take down threats we couldn't face alone. We're tool users who learned that a rock or a stick could multiply our effectiveness. She advanced the footage, showing the moment she used the foam canister against. Every species here has natural advantages. But combat isn't about who has the best advantages. It's about who uses what they have most effectively. It's about preparation, pattern recognition, psychological warfare, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to survive. A cadet in the front row, with crystalline features, raised a manipulator appendage, nodded at him. Commander, the footage shows you using Cadet Minyu as a shield, exposing him to fire from his own conspirators. Isn't that abandoning a fellow soldier? Good question, replied. In that moment, Minyu wasn't my fellow soldier. He was one of 4 people trying to hurt me. But I also calculated that his armor would protect him from training-level energy bolts. I used him tactically while ensuring he wouldn't be permanently harmed. When he showed willingness to change sides, I gave him a role that kept him safe while contributing to ending the fight. She looked at Minyu. Was I wrong to use you that way? Minyu shook his head. No, Commander, you were right. You saw an opportunity and took it. That's what you've taught us over the last 6 months. Hesitation gets you killed. Adaptation keeps you alive. Another cadet spoke up, from the middle rows. What about the psychological impact? You fought 4 of your own students. Doesn't that damage the trust between instructors and cadets? Considered the question carefully. These 4 weren't acting as my students when they ambushed me. They were acting as assailants. The moment they disabled safety systems and coordinated an attack, they stopped being students and became threats. I responded appropriately to that threat. She paused. But afterward, when they faced consequences, I chose to see them as students again. Students who made a catastrophic mistake but who could learn from it. That's the balance we have to maintain as soldiers and as instructors. In combat, you do what you must to survive. After combat, You do what you can to build something better." Admiral stepped forward. Commander Park's handling of this incident has become a teaching tool across the Academy. The footage is now studied in tactical courses, psychology courses, and ethics courses. What appears to be a simple fight is actually an inhuman combat doctrine. The Admiral brought up a new display showing an analysis breakdown. Notice how Commander Park never stops moving, never wastes energy, and never commits fully to any single action. She maintains awareness of all four threats simultaneously. She uses the environment, her equipment, and even her opponents against each other. This is human warfare distilled to its form. A cadet in the back stood up, his voice challenging. But humans still lose battles. We've all seen the casualty reports from the border conflicts. Humans die just like every other species. You're absolutely right, agreed, surprising the cadet. Humans die. We're mortal, fragile, and we bleed easily. We've lost battles, wars, entire colonies, but we're still here, still fighting, still adapting. You know why? She let the question hang in the air for a moment. Because we learned early in our evolution that individual survival matters less than group survival. We learned to sacrifice ourselves for our squad mates, to hold positions knowing we wouldn't survive, to buy time for others to complete the mission. We turned our fragility into a strength by accepting it and working around it. Spoke up again. In the 6 months since the incident, Commander Park has trained us personally. She's shown us human combat techniques, human tactical thinking, and human military history. I have learned more from her than from any instructor who shared my species. The looked uncomfortable with the admission but continued anyway. She defeated me in the corridor not because humans are better fighters. She defeated me because she was a better fighter. The difference is crucial. Species don't win battles. Soldiers do. Training, experience, and the willingness to learn, that's what creates effective soldiers. Felt a swell of pride at its words. 6 months ago, he would never have admitted such a thing. The training had been brutal, both physically and psychologically. She had pushed all 4 cadets to their limits and then beyond, forcing them to confront their prejudices and their weaknesses. But the results spoke for themselves. All 4 had improved dramatically in their combat scores. More importantly, they had become advocates for cooperation, using their own failure as a cautionary tale for other cadets. "Are there any other questions?" asked the assembly. A human cadet raised her hand. "Commander, you requested leniency for the cadets who attacked you. Why? Wouldn't punishing them more severely have sent a stronger message?" It would have sent a message, agreed, but not the right one. Expelling them would have reinforced the belief that humans are harsh and unforgiving. It would have created martyrs and increased resentment. By training them instead, I demonstrated that humans value growth over punishment, learning over revenge and cooperation over dominance. She gestured to the 4 former conspirators. These cadets made a terrible decision. They faced consequences, served their suspensions, and completed intensive remedial training. Now they're stronger, smarter, and more valuable to the military than they would have been if I'd simply had them expelled. That's not weakness. That's strategic thinking about long-term benefits versus short-term satisfaction. Admiral checked the time. We're approaching the end of this session. Commander Park, any final thoughts? Looked out at the assembly, seeing the mixture of species, cultures, and perspectives represented in the hall. This was what the Galactic Defense Academy was supposed to be about, bringing together the galaxy's best to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Final thought said, every species here brings something valuable to the military. Strength, speed, energy manipulation, precision, logic, and yes, human adaptability. None of us is complete on our own, but together, combining our strengths and covering each other's weaknesses, we become something powerful. She smiled slightly. The defense drill incident happened because 4 cadets forgot that lesson. They saw differences and assumed superiority instead of recognizing complementary capabilities. Don't make the same mistake. Learn from every species. Train with everyone. And remember that the soldier beside you, regardless of what they look like, is the one who might save your life someday. The assembly was dismissed, and cadets began filing out in clusters, already discussing what they had heard. Watched them go, noting how mixed the groups were. Humans walking with, debating with, species mixing and learning from each other. Minyu approached her as the hall emptied. Commander, I wanted to thank you for everything, for the second chance, for the training, for believing we could be better. You proved me right, replied. All 4 of you did. You took a horrible mistake and turned it into growth. That's what good soldiers do. And joined them, forming a small circle. For a moment, they stood together in comfortable silence, instructor and students who had forged an unlikely bond through conflict and reconciliation. What happens now? Asked. We finish our remedial training next month. Now you return to regular classes, said. You graduate, you serve. And maybe, if you're lucky, you get to pass on what you learned to the next generation of cadets. His voice was thoughtful. Will you tell them about us, future students? Every year, promised. The story of 4 cadets who ambushed an instructor during a defense drill, and how that instructor used 1 cadet to take down the other 3. It's too good a lesson to waste. She looked at each of them. But I'll also tell them the second part of the story, how those same 4 cadets chose to learn instead of remaining bitter, how they became some of the best soldiers in their graduating class, how they proved that mistakes don't define you, but how you respond to mistakes does. Minyu smiled. That's a better ending than we deserved." "Maybe," agreed, "but it's the ending you earned, remember that." As the four former conspirators left the hall together, already planning their study session for upcoming exams, remained behind. Admiral approached, her expression thoughtful. "You took a significant risk with those four," the Admiral said. "Yes," acknowledged, "but the best rewards come from calculated risks. And if they had failed, if they had proven you wrong," considered the question, "then I would have learned something too. That's what humans do, Admiral. We try, we fail, we learn, and we try again. It's not elegant and it's not always efficient, but it works." Admiral nodded slowly. "The incident report from today's assembly will be distributed throughout the fleet. Your handling of this situation, from the initial combat to the training program to this presentation, it's becoming a case study in leadership." "I just did what seemed right," said simply. "That's what makes it noteworthy," the Admiral replied. "You could have taken the easy path at every decision point. Expel the cadets, refuse to train them, exclude them from today's presentation. Instead, you chose the harder path because you believed it would produce better results. And you were right." The Admiral extended her hand and shook it firmly. "The Academy is fortunate to have you, Commander Park. You embody what we're trying to teach here." As left the assembly hall, she felt the familiar ache in her back where had slammed her into the floor 6 months ago. It still bothered her sometimes, a permanent reminder of that day. But when she thought about Minu's improved confidence, increased tactical awareness, newfound respect for other species, and even grudging acknowledgement of human capabilities, the ache seemed like a small price to pay. The defense drill incident had started as an attack, an attempt to prove human inferiority through violence. But it had ended as something else entirely, a lesson in what made humans dangerous. Not strength or speed, but the ability to adapt, to learn, to forgive, and to turn even enemies into allies when given the opportunity. And that, reflected as she walked the corridors of Station Harmony 7, was the most human thing of all.